everyone, it's Charlton, and I've had like a 2-day long headache. So, MC, thank you so much, dude. And you were another opinion into somebody that I work with personally, our contractor, who basically said that TXV valve price was way too high, and it would be 500 if that. You know, in this area, this part of the country, it's about 600, maybe a little bit more, whatever. But it was because of you that I didn't settle for that $1,300 price and got a second opinion. They came by today, and it wasn't even bad. It wasn't even bad. Based on everything he described to me, it just needed to be topped off. It cost $165. It probably will come up in the future, another few years from now, whatever. But just saved my parents $1,100, dude. I appreciate it greatly. I really do. My mom was just thrilled to death. So, thank you, dude. Thank you. All right, so I'm here to talk about the affidavit and also the press conference of some of the Botham Jean's attorneys. This individual, Lee Merritt, who's a local attorney. I think he's the lead attorney in this, representing the family of the victim, Botham Jean. And because he says that they have two witnesses, I think more than two witnesses, but two witnesses that were the closest to the incident who observed something different than that's in the affidavit. And actually it is different from what I was describing yesterday. I had said that the door was unlocked, so when she put her key in, she was able to turn the handle and open the door because it was unlocked from the inside. I think those electronic keys automatically lock if the door's closed. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the electronic locks, although I am familiar with these multi-living facilities, and I just came from one. The AC that I was talking about, there's 3 buildings, and inside the buildings, everything looks the same. You look down the hallway, you don't even know which side of the building you're on once you enter it, and it gets very confusing. Every doorway looks identical, and there's door numbers, but they're not prominent many times. I think it's pretty easy to go into the wrong apartment if it's unlocked but it wasn't unlocked, and according to the affidavit, it was slightly ajar. Now, the witnesses that Lee Merritt presented is talking about in this press conference seems to contradict the affidavit that it was even unlocked, and that they heard somebody knocking and somebody's shouting through the door to somebody else behind the Botham Jean, and presumably that was Amber Geiger. So I'm going to play that and talk about it. But first, the affidavit, okay? And I don't think I'm going to read this entire thing. I think I'm going to summarize it. But here it is. And basically, it's everything that I said yesterday. It's probably everything you've heard so far. But the door was slightly ajar. So when she put her electronic key into the lock, just the force of putting it into the lock pushed the door open. And from there, she saw, her presence alerted Botham Jean. At least it says that here. And she saw the silhouette of a large male, in the apartment. It was, the lights were off. She gave verbal commands to this individual, and this sounds terrible. As soon as I saw these headlines about him ignoring her verbal commands, so she drew her weapon and fired 2 shots. One of them hit him in the chest that kills him. That doesn't sound good. I mean, it doesn't. And but that's what's in here. I think lawyers probably helped craft at least, the attorneys at the press conference representing the family of the victim, Botham Jean. They seem to believe that lawyers helped her craft this affidavit because she was given a couple days to give her statement, and they have complaints about that. There's a fair amount going on here. I do think I understand some of it, and I'll discuss it, and obviously, the family is never going to see this their son again. And the poor family is the one is who suffers has suffered, and it's awful, absolutely awful. So, but I do think there's legal things going on that I'll discuss. I'm just giving you my opinion of kind of what's going on, the wrangling between the two different sides here, And I do think this woman made a major, massive mistake, and how accountable she should be made to be. That's obviously debatable. and she should be punished. And I think she's probably going to be punished for the rest of her life, no matter what, just in her head because of what she did, and pulled her weapon and shot prematurely, too soon, in my opinion. And even if it was just in the situation, had she just taken a moment, but she didn't, and you can't, once these things are done, you can't undo them. So I will read just a portion of it real quick and just jump around it because it's just it's legal language. Complainant Jane is the resident tenant of apartment 1478. Geiger, who is a Dallas police officer, lives in the same apartment complex directly beneath the complainant in apartment 1378. Apartment 1378 and apartment 1478 and the respective interior floor plans are in most ways identical and extremely similar to the exterior surrounding structure and description of each other. Complainant Jean was home alone when Geiger, who had just ended her shift but was still in her Dallas police uniform, arrived at the apartment complex and parked her vehicle on the 4th floor of the parking garage, which should correspond to the floor the resident lives on. Geiger entered the building and walked down the 4th floor hallway to what she thought was her apartment. She inserted a unique door key with an electronic chip into the door keyhole. The door, which was slightly ajar prior to Geiger's arrival, fully opened under the pressure or the force of the key insertion. Upon the door being opened, Geiger observed that the apartment interior was nearly completely dark. Additionally, the door being opened alerted complainant Jean to Geiger's presence, believing she had encountered a burglar, which she described as a large silhouette across the room in her apartment. Geiger drew her firearm, gave verbal commands that were ignored by the complainant Jean. As a result, Geiger fired her handgun 2 times, striking the complainant 1 time in the torso. Geiger then entered the apartment, immediately called 911, requesting police and EMS, and provided first aid to the complainant Jean. Due to the interior darkness of the apartment, Geiger turned on the interior lights while on the phone with 911. Upon being asked where she was located by emergency dispatchers, Geiger returned to the front door to observe the address and discovered she was at the wrong apartment, 1478. Geiger called 911 from her cell phone, requesting an ambulance and police to the offense location. Complainant Jean was transported to Baylor Hospital, where he died as a result of his injury. Geiger remained at the scene and informed the responding officers and the 911 operator that she thought she was at her apartment when she shot the complainant. Geiger believed she was in her apartment and confronted by a burglar when she fired her handgun, striking and killing him. Okay, I did read the whole thing. So, but according to this, she didn't realize she was in the wrong apartment. I mean, according to the affidavit, until she went out into the hallway and looked at the number. I guess she didn't even know the number to her own place, only living there for a month. That's a little odd. But somewhat, I don't know, that's possible. But that's according to this. She literally had to go to the front of it to get the actual address location. And at that point, she realized she was on the 4th floor, not the 3rd floor. And so that's the affidavit. Here, they talk, the attorneys. There's 3 attorneys here. Here, this is the local guy, and he's the Lee Merritt. And actually, in my opinion, he's the best attorney of the 3. But he basically describes 2 witnesses. There's multiple, but 2 witnesses that live very close to the location. That one was in a room by herself reading a book. The other was in a living room, I think, watching television. And they both claim to hear the same thing. Somebody shouting, let me in, and then knocking, and then shots. And a little bit more than that. I'm going to let him describe it. And then he sort of describes in another part of this, when he's asked by reporters, the nature of the tone of the words that they heard. And he describes it as not so much as like police talk, but more on slightly of maybe a personal level. I mean, they definitely, in this press conference, all 3 of them, they kind of jump, they get up to the edge, and then they back away. And I do think legally there's some things going on that, one of the big issues, I'm telling you right now, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, okay? But one of the big issues here is the fact that she's off duty. Okay, it's a huge issue, huge, and actually, you know, I think what's going on here on both sides is they're trying to come to an agreement, and they're using the various things from both sides as leverage to come to an agreement that everybody can live with. Okay, but the fact that she's off duty and not even though she's in her uniform, okay, and I think the defense or the plaintiffs here, these are the plaintiffs, I guess, you know, would much prefer, in terms of legally, would rather, you know, if she's on duty, the liability is the Dallas Police Department, not just the person herself, and because of that, the dollar figures we're talking about are astronomically different. And so I honestly think both sides are trying to come to an agreement, and they're both wrangling, you know, posturing to end up in the middle somewhere that that they can be satisfied, that the family can be satisfied, who's never going to be the same, and they're the ones who suffer from this all. But something that everybody can be satisfied with, at the Dallas Police Department, and even the person who's being charged with manslaughter, Amber Geiger. That's my thoughts. So I'll play you what he says in terms of the witnesses.
Residents of the apartment, and they lived nearby this location. Two of them were at their apartment together. One was happened to be in a quiet room reading a book, and so she was in the best position to hear things, and she heard a pounding at the door. The other one who was in the living room watching TV, she also heard the same pounding at the door. The person, the key witness, essentially, who heard more because she was in a quiet room reading, said she heard pounding at the door, and she heard "Let me in," shouted by "Let me in," at an elevated tone. She heard more pounding at the door, and then shortly thereafter, she heard gunshots. She went in to check with her sister, who happened to also be in the building. That sister told that her sister was outside investigating the gunshots. She grabbed her sister and said, "There's a shooter out there. You need to stay in the apartment complex." The sister says, "No, it's okay. I see a law enforcement officer," meaning this is probably a controlled situation. This person then went out to investigate herself. I missed an important detail. She also heard words. So as she was pounding, and after the gunshots, she heard what she believed to be the voice of a male, what we believe to be the last words of Botham Jean, which was, "Oh my God, why did you do that?" And there was nothing heard after that.
That was the one who was in the quiet room?
Yes.
Oh my God, why did you do that?
Okay.
And did she say it all to you? A feeling that she got about the sense of what was going on?
He's being asked about the sort of the nature of the words that were exchanged or said, and what did it sound like? I mean, was it? And this is where he says it's, you know, it doesn't sound like police commands. It sounds like something else, like more. I'll let him say it.
Did she say it all to you? A feeling that she got about the sense of what was going on, or possible relationship, if there was a sense of urgency? Was there more? I guess maybe the feeling is what I'm trying to describe.
Sure. She described in her words that the voice sounded personal, that it sounded desperate, that it was elevated, but it didn't sound like, "Hey, open up, it's the police." It sounded like, open the door, I want you to talk to me or interact with me. And I can't draw, and she didn't draw any relational aspect from that, but she just said it didn't feel like a dry, authoritarian law enforcement opened the door. It felt personal.
Is there any...
Okay, so, I mean, those are the only two parts I want to play. But that almost sounds like the two persons knew each other beforehand. But to be honest with you, in my opinion, I don't think they did. And mostly because of the fact that they literally live right on top of each other. You know, I just don't know how that is just such a remarkable coincidence, because that actually does fit to her story. I think that is the case. I think she mistaken this. Now, she might have been talking to somebody that she thought was in the apartment that was a burglar, and she actually was engaging that person, but I don't know. And I don't know how that changes things, but I just don't know. I don't know if there's something else to this, more to it, or if, if they actually had some kind of they knew each other previously. I don't think so, though. I don't. But, or if this is just legal posturing on both sides as they come closer and closer together to an agreement, or if they're just trying to get to what actually happened, which I think primarily is the number one focus of his mother. She just wants to know what happened, and everyone can understand that for sure. And I'm gonna leave it there. All right, thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.